Welcome to Butch's Building Blocks. During my last video, I posted a message out to my subscribers and asked them, what would you like to see me make? I had one guy send me a message back and said what he'd really like to see is a French rolling pin with a spiral going all the way down. This is an intriguing idea. I decided to figure out how to make it smooth and not just block step it around like most people try to make a spiral. So, come along with me and I'll show you how we're going to accomplish this. As usual, when I come across a new project to me, I always like to write it down so I know exactly what I'm going to do. French rolling pin, I'm going to use bloodwood and hard maple. The starting thickness is 7/8 of an inch. We're going to have a block that has a 45-degree angle on it, and then we're going to glue the bloodwood and maple together so that it looks like this. My final rolling pin will be 2 inches in the barrel, 12 inches across, and then a 3-inch taper on each side with beautiful rosewood caps on it. I've done some rough calculations and I need 48 inches of both maple and bloodwood. They're going to be 1/4 inch wide strips. I'm going to cut the 45-degree angle on the edge of both slits. I'm going to cut the 45-degree angle on both pieces of wood and then glue them together. After I glue them, I'm going to cut them into 2.5 inch lengths and drill a center hole through each block, which I will use to center those pieces while I'm gluing them. When I glue them, since there's going to be 18 blocks, if I go to clamp them together without holding them somehow, they're going to shift and squirm on me. So I'm going to put type 3 glue on them, and then as I align them, I'm going to take some CA glue and put it across the joint and then seal it that way. That way the glue, the wood glue, will still have a chance to dry and harden. The CA glue will keep the blocks in the correct alignment while I apply clamping pressure. Okay, let's set our blade for 45 degrees. And that's the angle we want. Let's lock it in place. We've adjusted our blade already to our 45-degree angle. In order to have enough wood, given the angle and the overlap of those two pieces, we need to have 3/4 of an inch to the blade. Okay, we've cut our 45-degree angles on each piece. If we've measured correctly, we should end up with about 2.5 inches across the width of that board. Just a 1/16 of an inch over 2.5, but I'd rather be a little larger than a little smaller. When using exotic woods, bloodwood, purdouk, anything from Africa or South America, these trees produce a lot of oil. So you need to take some rubbing alcohol, clean that glue joint off so that the oils don't stop the glue from adhering. You can see the red. That's the oil that I took off. That would make this joint weak and probably end up breaking during turning. I'm going to be using a 2-inch piece of cherry, which I will secure the pieces down to. This is Tight Bond 3, so it's food grade. We don't have to worry about it. I put a piece of wax paper down here so that if any glue drips off, I don't have to worry about gluing my wood pieces that I want to my cherry stock, which would be a very terrible thing to do. To a nice beautiful piece of cherry. Okay, now that we have good coverage, let's put our maple on and then let's clamp it down. So I have a little bit too much pressure here. There's slightly lip. So let's back some of these off. Let's increase the pressure on that one. Keep it, so you can keep it from moving. Still feels like it's shifted in an upward direction. Okay, that's better. We'll let that dry and then we'll do the second piece. Here's what our stock looks up from an end view as they're glued up. This is the 45-degree angle that we need. Now we're going to have to take these pieces and cut them into 2.5-inch segments. Our next step is to cut block segments out here. Using my sled, marked my exact distance that I need, and now we'll just cut through and make segments. After cutting our boards into 2.5-inch segments, we now have two piles which are 8.5 inches tall. A couple extra just in case something goes wrong, and we'll have some replacements. Our next step now is to take each of these sections and cut them in half. For this next step, you'll probably need to make some type of a gluing jig. I just have two 2x4s in which these sides will run through the planer to make sure they're parallel. There's a piece of wax paper that goes all the way across to keep me from gluing my work piece to my 2x4s. And what we're going to do is take these blocks and then turn them around so that they look like this. That gives us an angle for the one side going in this direction and an angle for the other side going in the opposite direction. That will allow us to continue our spiral all the way around. Before I glue them, I'm going to wipe these with isopropyl alcohol to take the oils off of them. Then just put a little glue on each one, sit them in here, and clamp them down tight. My original idea to glue these blocks together did not work very well because I couldn't get the pieces to sit flat. So I made a change. I put 2x4 on the top, 2x4 on the bottom, and my pieces in between, and now I have clamped them together. The important thing when gluing these up for turning is that the top and the bottom are flat, otherwise you end up with gaps in your rolling pin. This way, there should be no gaps. They should all be about as even as you can get. Now that we have all of our blocks glued together, there's some glue on them, plus a little bit of a ridge on a couple of them. So let's sand them down really quick on my belt sander before we get ready to drill holes in them. Our next step is to drill our center hole. The diameter of your drill needs to match whatever dowel diameter that you have. Save yourself some time and rig yourself up a jig so that you can just slide these in and drill. Stack all of your pieces so that they're all in the same direction, and that will also save you time. After you get done cutting all of your center holes, I would suggest doing a dry run to see that these lines will truly line up on your workpiece there. This one's just a little loose, but it does fit. Our next step will be to glue all of this together. I have put on the first 3 pieces. This is how I'm doing it, taking a little bit of Titebond glue. And spreading it out. And I got a little bit of a line there, so I'll just clean that up. Taking one section, sliding it all the way down, and now we have the side there. Need to line up those angles so that it's continuous. And then you can also see it's continuous on this side. Now here's where you got to play with it a little bit. You may have to jockey it a little bit in one direction or the other. Once you get that on, give yourself a little bit of clamping pressure here, just to make sure that it doesn't slide on you when you put your super glue on it. Again, check to make sure that your joints are aligned nicely. Give it a little force. Turn it upside down and find a clean edge that you didn't get glue on. Put a little super glue on it, a little activator. And go to the next side. If you have glue welling out, just clean it off a little bit. Put some more CA glue on that side. Give it a little spritz, and there you go. Now I'll let this sit here for about 5 minutes before I take these clamps off, and then I'll put on the next piece. We've got all of our pieces glued together, but as you can see, there are points that are sticking up. These points have a chance to get caught on the lathe tool and shear off, which would ruin our project. So we're going to go onto the bandsaw and cut all of these tips off to make our turning a little bit easier. Now, as you can see, that'll be much less for the lathe tool to catch on. I'm going to do the rest of these, and then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Here's our rolling pin. This is just a piece of pine, sacrifice pine. I was going to use rosewood, and I decided it was going to take too much away from the bloodwood color, so I have a block of curly maple as my end cap. And then you can see that all those tips have been cut off, so that when I start turning, there's not quite so much of me catching an edge and peeling it back. And then again, we've got the curly maple and the pine blank. It's all set up and ready to go. It's time to start turning our piece down. I'm going to start out with my skew. If you've never used a skew, I would highly recommend you practice. It is an excellent tool for turning pieces such as this. I have marked off the 3-inch end for our handle, and I'm now going to taper this down to 1.5 inches. We have tapered our two handle sides down to 1.5 inches. I need a point 2 inches in the middle. So far, this is our design that we have. Not too bad. There are a few places where I made a couple mistakes on it, but we'll catch those in the next time. Here we're seeing a separation where originally was not. This is because these angles dig down, the angle spreads. And so I'm going to have to figure out a way of offsetting these pieces so that as we turn it down, there's not quite as much of a Our next step will be to round this down and trim this pine blank down to the point where all we have to do is cut it off with a little saw. We've now trimmed up the ends so they look good. Now we're going to do a little bit of a water pop here in between sandings. It'll also give us an idea of what the rolling pin will look like after it's all finished and oiled up. It'll still be a pretty rolling pin. Our rolling pin definitely is interesting. It's got a pretty cool pattern to it. Let's add some oil and see what it looks like when we shine it up. We'll let that soak in for a while and then add another couple layers. Our rolling pin project is at its end. It looks pretty darn good. Here's another view of our rolling pin. As you can see, the spiral staircase in most places turned out very good. There were a couple blocks here that I inverted without knowing it. I'm going to take this project and do it a second time. And this time, instead of having the staircase effect, I'm going to see if I can't make it more shaped like this spiral smooth line. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I had a good time making this pin. Please leave me any comments and I'll try and answer them. If you really liked this video, please subscribe to my channel.